Thank you, Chairman Lent, members of the committee. My name is Sam Lair with the Idaho Freedom Foundation, and I'm here in opposition to Senate Bill 1145. I wanted to frame this issue more broadly about how the efficacy of the literacy intervention program generally. For those of you who may not be aware, in 2016, the Federal Department of Education started requiring state departments of education to establish consolidated plans, which included within them long-term goals for academic performance and proficiency, usually determined by state standardized tests. The previous administration in the Department of Education established a goal of 68.6% by 2022. Today, in 2024, we sit at 54%, so we are by far and large not anywhere close to that goal. The current administration has established more modest goals of reaching 58.6 by 2030. And if you extrapolated out that growth rates to beyond 2030, you would find that we wouldn't reach literacy proficiency at meeting graduation rates of 80% until 2052. The Literacy Proficiency Funding Program receives now $72 million a year, $64 million increase from 2017 when it reached $9.1 million. And yet, despite this investment, fourth grade ISAT scores from 2017 to 2024 have only increased by 1.4% from 48% to 49%. NAEP scores are a more bleaker story, meanwhile, showing that in 2018, the 38% rate has gone down to 32%. Now, I think we all recognize this is the problem we want to solve. The question is how. There is two philosophies in this manner. There is the expand the scope of government and increase government control over children and their education prior to kindergarten, and there is increasing accountability into the existing system. I'd just like to briefly remind this committee that there is already a preparatory program for public education. It's called kindergarten. That's what kindergarten was originally designed for, and I think it's what it should be focused towards. Thank you for your time, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Senator Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Lair. So my question, based on what you were talking about, so are you saying that the funding that we've done, the money that we've put into early literacy is not equating to the outcomes that we should be seeing at this time? Is that what your premise is?
Correct. And so I'd like to preface that this literacy intervention model has been tried throughout the country. Mississippi is kind of the gold standard in regards to the one that's seen actual results with this. So the question is, what is Mississippi doing that places like Idaho are not doing? And if you go to the last two sections of your packet there, I do have a suggestion for the committee and for the Department of Education, since they're listening. One of the most effective results that they've seen, so one of the most effective programs, is not actually pre-K. The most effective thing you can do is actually increase student retention. So students who do not reach third grade, cannot read, hold them back. When you do that, when you have that threat, when you tell parents, hey, your kid's not on track to go into fourth grade, it increases parent buy-in into the system. And that's really what it's about here.
And Mr. Chairman, just to follow up then?
Follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And with that being said, so you said that you have some ideas on what could help facilitate what we're trying to accomplish to where what we're putting into the programs would equate to what we want to get out of them. Is that correct?
Mr. Lair.
Chairman Lent, Senator Nichols, yes, that's correct. And those are in the last two pages of the little packet there. And those are focusing on retention as opposed to expanding the role of government.
I do have a question. The numbers that I look at, especially in those timeframes, actually show a national trend that during COVID, there's a significant trend downward, and Idaho didn't progress downward as much as the rest of the country. So are these numbers corrected for that? So, yes, there is Chairman Lent, there is a national trend, you're correct, because of the COVID learning loss in which reading scores and math scores have both gone down. But as I mentioned, Mississippi has actually shown a reverse correlation where their reading scores have increased despite the learning loss in COVID. So again, the question is, what is places like Mississippi doing that places like Idaho are not? I think the data shows that merely providing funds for literacy intervention program are not the solution. And I believe that philosophically, expanding into the pre-K market is not the solution either. Thank you. If I remember right, Mississippi was starting from a lower place before then, so they might not have felt that. But, so your numbers don't correct then for COVID? Because when you quote the numbers before and after, there is a definite gap in there that COVID affected all schools across the country. I just want to make sure we're clear on when we point from one number to the other that we account for that as well.
Chairman Lent, yes, so as I admitted, there is a learning loss across the nation because of COVID. But to me, I think the exact number is something close to $250 million over the past 8 years into this program. You know, we're putting a significant amount of funds into the literacy intervention program, and I would think with that sort of investment, we would see, despite the learning loss we've had in COVID, some sort of improvement.
Okay, well, thank you. We do have one other question. Senator Ward Engelking.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think a lot of that money, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of that money was federal dollars. It went for a lot of things that people could use at home and tutoring and stuff. So it wasn't, and it was to, in fact, make sure that kids were capable of learning online and out of school for some of that time, I think. I believe it is, and correct me if I'm wrong.
Thank you. Mr. Lair.
Senator Lent, Senator Ward Engelking, yes, there was some funding gaps to provide during the COVID learning loss, but the figures I'm pointing to are merely what the state is investing into the literacy intervention program.
All right, well, thank you. I'm not seeing any further questions.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee.
Thanks for your time today.